First of all, congratulations on this documentary. It is spectacular. I got caught up in this story. What is it like to create a story like this? Because Justin, you seem so willing to be vulnerable, and John, capturing this. What is it like to create something that's going to be this impactful?
I don't know. That's a good question. I just I feel like whenever I've done any kind of documentary projects, a lot of it is just sort of like genuinely getting to know a person sort of without a lot of boundaries. And I do feel like uh, documentary work in particular is very connective, and I feel like there's a lot of trust involved. And so I feel like that's one of the things that draws me to it is that it does feel like a truly collaborative project where like if you talk about like narratives and stuff like that, you're feeding people lines that you've written or someone else has written and they have to hit the mark, and there's not a lot of interplay outside of the nature of the performance.
Justin, what is it like to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and tell your story very raw, very truthful?
Um, well, it's weird because I was in a room with John and he's my friend. So, it was like it wasn't that hard to explain stuff or talk to him about stuff. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think like the vulnerability thing's weird. I guess I just I don't feel vulnerable. I also didn't say stuff that I think mostly shouldn't say. I mean, occasionally I'll say stuff and I'm like, fuck, I didn't think about so and so seeing this or hearing this and being like, "You're a dick," which happens every now and then. Mainly like my mom and stuff, because she's like, "Oh, that sucks that you said that." I'm like, "Well, it happened," and so it's not that like, um, yeah, I guess I just don't, I don't. The vulnerability thing's weird. There's like also people feel shame and stuff where like I guess I could talk shit about myself, and I do. I mean, I wrote a book called How to Lose Friends and Irritate People, and I realized like instead of talking shit about other people, I just talk about my own. Talk shit about myself, and so I guess like it's easier to point the finger at yourself than someone else. I don't know, whatever. I just think people. I'm a dick, and people think I say shit that I shouldn't say, and I don't know. I mean, I fuck, well, it happens. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just not vulnerable. I just don't like have, maybe I'm on the spectrum or some sort of spectrum where I just don't have like a filter that works like a normal person.
I think that's what happens with a lot of people who are honest with the way they see life. They get misinterpreted in what they're saying. So, uh, what do choosing what to put out in this documentary, you did put a lot of stuff out there that I think will get a lot of talk, like the suicide of your mate and all that. How do you feel about putting that out now? And what was it like to, I guess, go through this retrospective of your career?
The suicide thing's pretty weird because I mean, I think times are kind of changing. So like when Eric Allen passed away, I was 25, I guess, maybe in my somewhere in my 20s. And it was really odd because I was on tour when it happened and it was before the internet and stuff. So like people were finding out about it and coming up to me and kind of saying things to me, not in a mean way, but like just like being very like um just not like being very sensitive. And so I think it like prepped me in life to just be like, yo, people are fucking rude. And then you just kind of roll with it, including myself. But, it was like people are coming up and be like, yeah, I heard Eric died about like this way or that way. And they just said a bunch of shit. I'm like, hey, I don't really want to talk about this. Like my best friend at the time passed away. So, but as far as like talking about it in the film, I mean, I think it's relevant. People know about it. It was a huge impact. I mean, he was a huge impact on my life, and then him passing away was also a huge impact on my life. And it made me think about life in general and death and morals and whatever, all kinds of stuff, regret. So, I mean, it's a huge topic to discuss, but I'm glad that people now are kind of becoming a little bit more sensitive about it and the way that they approach it with nuance. And I think John did a great job. I really do. It like almost, like when I first watched it, it almost kind of like brought me to tears, which I don't usually have those issues, but it was interesting to see how he put it together and how it did kind of have emotion. Where like I think when I'm talking about it, it might be um I don't know, just a little bit more stern, I suppose.
John, for you, since you are Justin's friend, how much of this story did you already know, and how much did you discover while making this? And, you know, what was the process in putting this together like?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I knew a lot of it just because so many of his projects have a ton of stories attached to them, and that's sort of how I found out about it anyway, was just hearing like wild stories about different shows. Um, and like he'd also already written two books at that point when I'd asked him. So I mean, I'd already kind of read through a lot of different experiences. Um, and then yeah, I mean, as far as it coming together, we'd known each other for a while at that point, and I finally just like pitched him, it's like, would you be into me making a documentary about you? And he was down, and so like we just dove right into it.
Mhm. Sitting in a room together, going through this, how did his story impact you? Were you able to keep going straight through, or were there breaks between all this to just process what's going on?
Not to process, but just because it's a lot of documentary work takes longer than you would guess, and a lot of it is like opportunity, and it's giving things time, and it's just waiting for people to be close to you so you can actually like drive out and interview them. Because like we couldn't afford to just like fly wherever we wanted to go do this, like fly a whole film crew to go shoot with somebody. Um, so like yeah, I mean it starts in like fits and spurts, and for any kind of like documentary that I've worked on. Like I'm editing one now, for someone else that I'm just the editor on. And like, yeah, it all is just like it's, oh, we got all this new stuff, and then suddenly you look at it and you try to build it out and you realize you're missing something else now because now this new stuff is here and you have to fill in this new gap that started. And so it's always this sort of thing of going until it feels like a whole cohesive thing.
Definitely. And Justin, you talk a little bit in the documentary about how punk is not necessarily a rebellion, but it's something that's not mainstream. Right now, with friends that I have that are younger than me, I grew up in the 90s. I remember the punk scene being just like a bunch of us outcasts getting together to listen to just intense music. Now it seems like it's more mainstream, more acceptable. How do you feel with the way punk has evolved throughout the years?
Well, it's a good question because I always like I always draw this line between two things, punk and punk rock. And I think punk rock is like what is kind of more mainstream, where I think punk is, I mean, it's mainstream, but it's not recognizable as like a leather jacket and a mohawk, you know. I think it kind of or like fast music or annoying music. I think because I think like there's like these ethics that are kind of built out of what punk was before it was even recognized as a genre of music, or is more just like a subculture. And I think that you can look at things that don't, on the surface, look punk, but
Mhm.
are. You know, I mean, you look at like, for me, off the top of my head, I would say like um, I don't know what John's crew consider themselves, but they all seem very punk to me. You know, I mean, there's that, or there's like my friend who's a local organic farmer. That what he does and how his company called Food Shed operates is very punk. You know, I don't think he would call himself that. My dog, he's a punk, you know. I mean, like, just it's just, you know, or like I don't know, like people that run like animal shelters or rescues. That's like a kind of a punk thing to do. So there's things that I see in this like in this, you know, light that you would consider punk, but it doesn't have to do with music, and it has to do with like obviously like the basic, you know, roots of it, like, you know, kind of like question authority or fuck authority or something, but like creating something that's kind of more inclusive for everybody. Where I think like it's a rejection of certain parts of society and parts of humanity or civilized or like civilization, I guess, you know, where it's just kind of like, hey, we're going to reframe this and do something for us, you know, to survive. Again, yeah, I mean, it could be like people. I mean, I look at like a good example would be like hip hop or like people that do are like turntablists. Like that's such a punk thing to do. Like taking a turntable and making this crazy instrument out of it that's almost by like definition, not musical. That seems like a pretty punk thing to do. That came out of hip hop. I think that's punk as well. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's like however you look at it. Yeah, there's bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit that looks like on the surface level as being punk, and it's just not. Um, for me to say what is and what isn't punk, that's not my job. It's just like what I see in this world is something that's like inspiring or helpful. Granted, or most of the time it'll to me appear as something that I would consider punk. If you're challenging something and trying to change something.
Definitely. I really enjoy the fact that you call it annoying because I feel that just like with more faster, brutal metals, punk creates its own community. It unites people through that common like that a lot of the people in the documentary said you're not sure why you like it, you just like it. For both of you, what is it like to be part of that community and give light to that community that is united through something that is much, higher than themselves.
You want me to go first? Cool. Uh, yeah, for me, yeah, it's very. I can just add on to what Justin was saying, where like to me, it's about sort of like an alternative system to something you see as being a broken system, and it's about like I think so much, especially in the realms of it that I've been in, the kinds of shows I go to, the kind of people I know that I see at every show. It's a lot of people that like don't have like systems in place, or like they don't have access to generational wealth. They don't have like a stable family unit. They might have like substance abuse issues that they're trying to overcome. Like, and they're just it is about like creating a community where you have like support for each other that alleviates like pain caused by like an uncaring setup that we live inside of every day. Um, and so that to me is always what it's about. I mean, like I think that's what art is about in general. I think art is about making people less alone. Ultimately, I think it's about like forget who said it. Someone called it throwing like a ladder across a chasm. Like we're both two sides of this thing, and it's just an endless pit beneath you. And then art's the thing that can connect you in between your loneliness. And so, like once you apply that to the political and the social, where you have this community that you can do bigger and better things that benefit all of you in. I think that's really what it's about to me.
That was great, by the way, John. I guess like for me, I see things like also like a way to kind of when I was 16, I went to UC Long Beach. Not I didn't attend it. I went there for an anarchist convention, which I don't think could ever happen anymore. It was insane. The whole campus was like to learn all these different aspects of communal living, social politics, progressive politics and stuff. And it was very eye-opening and interesting. But at the time, I remember there was a lot of people there. There's a lot of people I knew and stuff too, and a lot of people from bands, punk bands. And at the time, everyone seemed like pretty casual in there for to learn. But the band Total Chaos was there, and I remember them like looking cool with mohawks and shit, and like being annoying and drunk and fighting and doing drugs and fucking crying. One guy was crying. Like it was like really fucking stupid. So I looked at that and I was like, huh, what is punk? What is this thing that we're dealing with? Because I felt bad for them because they had all the, the uniform and shit and didn't like really have it down as far as like what to do, I guess, from within. And then so fast forward to like maybe a couple years ago, I went and saw Converge play at this festival in Austin. And they're an awesome band and I love them as people and their music. And, like they're a legacy band, I guess you would call it. Like they play hardcore. They could phone it in, but I feel like they don't. They deliver every time. And it was so inspiring to see this band play and see like all of these interesting. The crowd was very interesting. There was like a lot of trans kids there and like a lot of women and people that were like very communal, and it was very loving and kind, and they were playing super brutal music, and it just really made me feel like glad that I was part of something, like kind of, again, I guess going back to the previous question, like sort of drawing the line, there's the punk rock and then there's the punk. And that was a thing that I really wanted to identify with, because I felt like when seeing Converge play that show, I mean, I've seen a lot of bands play that, like similar shows where it's very inclusive, but seeing that specific show just was, Gabe Serbian had just passed away. It was just like an interesting time for me to kind of go out in public and see people and see this sort of shift and change. And it just made me feel glad that I was part of the right thing instead of like the wrong thing. And part of something that is progressive and part of something that does actually do stuff that's like for the greater good of people, I suppose.
Awesome. Well, congratulations to both of you for this film. It is fantastic. It is an impactful story, and I feel that this will make a community that, doesn't necessarily that aren't necessarily seen in the mainstream have some visibility. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.